in economic science, there is a huge variety. There are people really living in the ivory tower and doing extremely complicated models, pursuing elegance, style, formalism, more than substance. If you want to provide the beautiful model encompassing and explaining the world economy, then we are bound to fail. But rather than thinking about having this huge innovation, this radical innovation, we should be more humble also in this respect and think about small incremental innovation, looking very carefully at the issues, looking very carefully at the issues, looking very carefully at the policies, at the details, at the institutional features, and providing small suggestions on how to slightly improve matters. Many have been saying that capitalism is the worst system in the world, but except for all of the other forms that have been tried from time to time. I think economics matter because it's a way of organizing the relevant information and of thinking about the complexity of economic system. Clearly, this works if economists are sufficiently humble to acknowledge that things are complex and they don't want to find shortcuts at all levels. Because the lay person often tends to simplify matters, and unlike other sciences or disciplines, they tend to believe that things are relatively easy and they can say something about it. Virtually almost every single day, as sometimes on the press, I was involved in a quite well-known public administration in Italy. I do receive mail from a person without background in economics, and these people claim to have the recipe to solve extremely complicated issues like the low growth of Italian economy or reduce the public debt. And often these views are completely wrong because they do not, most of the cases, they are completely wrong because they don't understand, the complexity of the system. I give a recent example, if you like, that in my view gives you an idea of how people think about very substantive issues in a way that can be extremely misleading. In Italy, during the COVID-19 pandemic, a lockdown of layoffs, of all economic layoffs was implemented. They were banned. All types of layoffs, whether individual or collective economic dismissals. So now, 1 year down the road of this decision, there are discussions about lifting this restriction, and everybody seemed to think that this ban is something that prevented layoffs and should be kept because there won't be layoff, there will be a reduction in employment levels. So that's clearly a completely wrong view, and indeed the facts are telling us that we lost some 1 million jobs, and the reason why we lost some million jobs is that there is not only the layoff part, but there is also the hiring part. So if you prevent layoffs, the firm will immediately stop hiring the people, and that's another way to reduce employment. Also, they will not renew fixed-term contract at their expiration, and that has been happening very much. The connection between the layoff part and the hiring part are usually not taken into account by people, without any background in economics. Clearly, everybody who has been studying economics would know that the two decisions are interlinked. Another example related to this issue, the proposal has been recently made to lift the ban or let me say this, to keep the restriction, to prevent layoffs, only for firms in sectors that are facing difficult conditions. So that a very serious problem of redundancies and that do not seem to have really prospect in the future due to the pandemic or other structural reasons. For instance, we are talking about the government, the Ministry of Development, of Economic Development in Italy has been suggesting that there should be still this firing restriction for the textile industry, which is an industry that has been for several years under very difficult conditions. So that clearly would suggest that this would clearly create a gross wastage of resources, because even if effective, the restriction would clearly involve a lot of resources being channeled to firms that do not have any possibility to recover in the medium to the long run. Also, this may lead to several business failures. So, I'm telling this because clearly economists would be able to understand all of these trade-offs and all of these complications that are related to such a simple norm and restriction. People without background in economics would not, and they may lead to very serious mistakes and a bad use, a gross wastage of public resources. Well, honestly, this is the first time I hear about economics engineering. I understand more economics close to policymaking. And I would call it that way. I have nothing against engineers, absolutely. I think they're very relevant and so on, but I wouldn't call it that way. I mean, I've never been calling that way. There is a lot of, in economic science, there is a huge variety. There are people really living in the ivory tower and doing extremely complicated models, pursuing elegance, style, formalism, more than substance. Sometimes they use a lot of power, or analytical power, extremely complicated math, to get to results that are fairly obvious, to say the least. In some cases, they are useless. So that part of the science. In the science, there are also people working and developing methods that can be applied to very serious issues and problems and help in instructing a decision in a better way. So I think in science there is a lot of variety. And clearly there are wonderful examples, good examples, like people working on under development, the work done by Esther Duflo, Banerjees, and Michael Kramer, and that has been rewarded with a Nobel Prize, is something that certainly is extremely useful. On labor, the work done by David Card and others is certainly an example of development of methods and the use and collection of data and the use of data to answer difficult questions and to provide guidance on these issues based on empirical evidence. And often this brings economics very close to what you call economic engineering. So economic close to policymaking is evidence-based economic policy, which I think is the most useful way to to think about economics. Economics should be very much that. We should be humble because the issues are extremely complicated, and we will not be able to answer all type of questions. Maybe sometimes these attitudes will not be rewarded by our profession. Certainly would not perhaps induce a brilliant academic career, although there are the exceptions I was mentioning before. But I think would be extremely useful. No, people like Mario Draghi, for instance, certainly they do not have any academic, this clearly never been, considered as being, academic economists, and but certainly are people who have been playing a very important role it's a way, in my view, to conceive the profession of an economist that is very useful. Well, in part, the previous answer was going in that direction. Yes, it could, but I don't think that most of the work that has been done does that. There is a lot of work that actually is not so much directed to that results, and clearly part is due to the fact that the research agenda of some people is very far away from concrete problems that affect welfare of millions of people. In other cases, it is because people tend to be slave of the elegance, of the formalism of some models, and that even if they try to address relevant issues, they seem to be induced to fly away from the type of solution that and also of predictions that would be most useful. I can make some example there as well, if you like. I think it's a minority of research results that are really going in the direction of serving the common good. And often these are very small things. I wouldn't be considering huge innovations, but these are incremental innovation. Just understand a bit better a small thing. We provide a suggestion on how to improve a small detail of a policy. There, I think there is really a way for economists to serve the common good. If you want to provide the beautiful model encompassing and explaining the world economy, then we are bound to fail. If you think about the two most recent crises, think about the financial crisis. Almost every economist working on finance and growth was predicting that globalization would have been very useful and would have been stabilizing economies, would have been creating resilience in our economies because of a principle of risk diversification, and missing markets would have increased the efficiency of economic systems. Well, it turned out very few exceptions, like Raghu, Rajan, and others, who were warning about the risk of strong integration in financial markets and many bad incentives that were present at that level, and so on and so forth. But most of the profession was instead thinking about that the globalization, cum financial deepening, was a way to make our economies more resilient. And well, it turned out that globalization was certainly a factor behind the the global financial crisis, and was rather than playing a good role, it played a role of extending very rapidly the contagion and leading to a very heavy world crisis. Another example is with the pandemic. There was a model that was quite popular because it had been working pretty well in understanding the output fall in transition economies. It's a model of disorganization developed by Olivier Blanchard and Michael Kramer. This was used at the beginning of a pandemic to state that we would have mass trade disruption associated to the pandemic, associated to the fact that there was a breaking of value chains, and firms would have not been able to get the intermediate products requiring production, and that would have led to a massive output fall, collapse of world trade, and all of these type of things. All of this did not materialize at all. Firms were pretty able to substitute and replace output, and that model was extremely simplifying something which is way more complicated by using very restrictive technologies, description like Leontief type of technology, not allowing for any type of substitution across inputs. So this is to tell you that when you pursue elegance and you use clearly simplification to model things that are extremely complex, at the end of the day, you like so much this model that you tend to exchange the models for the reality. And that leads you to think in a way that could be as misleading as the way of thinking of a lay person that I was mentioning at the outset. So I think that rather than thinking about having this huge innovation, this radical innovation, we should be more humble also in this respect and think about small incremental innovation, looking very carefully at the issues, looking very carefully at the issues, looking very carefully at the policies, at the details, at the institutional features, and providing small suggestions on how to slightly improve matters. That, I think, is the way to proceed. Not always, as I think also my previous answer would suggest. If honest, I would say in most of the cases it does not. But when used properly, could contribute to addressing these issues certainly in a better way, and guiding at least the organization of information. We live in a world where there is a lot of information, and often people without a good economic background, also statistical background, are not able to use properly this information. So that is clearly a contribution we can provide that could be indeed important. Oh, sure, they should. I mean, as all the other advisor, all the other also disciplines. Yes, we have, we clearly are responsible for the things that we state, and given the complexity of a problem, we can certainly make mistakes. But from at least, I'm saying, a matter of intellectual honesty, and we should be accountable Um, I organize. I've been organizing for the last 15 years a meeting in Trento, which is called the Festival of Economics, which is an event that aims at conveying the method of economists to people without background in economics, and to discuss about relevant issues, but bringing in the way of thinking of economists. And after the great financial recession, I organized a trial to economists, and we had there, the prosecutors. We had. We clearly were extremely severe in looking at the mistakes that our profession had made in that context. So I'm giving you this example because I do think that certainly there is an issue of accountability of our opinion, and that we have some responsibility. We have clearly responsibility about the things we say, especially if we are being considered. Most of the time, the opinion of economists is not so much considered, but when it is, clearly, if it is wrong, clearly it can be pretty damaging. I was about to ask you to define capitalism. No, I think it helps in understanding a market economy. This is what you mean by capitalism. Certainly does. It gives you a framework. I think the thing that the reference and something that will always be relevant is the law of demand and supply. I think that's what really, and I think will survive always, this type of thing. It has always been relevant and will keep on being relevant. Yes, so it is certainly a useful discipline to understand how market operate, market failures, market imperfections, and by doing that, also suggesting that there is an important role of a state to remedy for these imperfections. Well, I started by saying that we should be humble, and then you asked me this question, so I don't think I have the answer. I don't know. I really don't know. No, what I think that demand and supply will survive. I mean, that is, they always have been there. I mean, also from the Stone Age, and they, I think, will still be there. But I wouldn't dare say more than that. Again, the easy and simple question that you asked me. No, I think I would answer the way Winston Churchill answered about democracy. It's many have been saying that capitalism is the worst system in the world, but except for all of the other forms that have been tried from time to time. So I don't know any better system to some extent.